On behalf of Minister Carnes, welcome to another edition of Translation and Interpretation. I am Yehunatan Yisrael Shema, and I am your narrator for this lesson.
Shalom, beloved. I'm Dion White, and welcome to Light of Yahweh Ministry. Today we dive into the ancient scrolls of Genesis, not merely to study words, but to uncover divine fingerprints. We're going to investigate one of the most astonishing and overlooked mysteries in Scripture to date, the Aleph Tav, the untranslated Hebrew sign that appears not once but over 7,000 times in the Tanakh, which we know as the Old Testament, and yet it's hidden in nearly every English translation that we have today. Ask yourself why. Because the Aleph Tav, the first and last letters of the Hebrew alphabet, isn't just a grammatical marker. It's a divine code. It's a prophetic symbol. It's a shadow of the Messiah himself, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, who declared in Revelations 22:13, he said, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end." And in Hebrew, it reads as Aleph and Tav. This is not just theology. This is destiny written in every stroke of the ancient texts, of these sacred texts. And today we will open our eyes to see what was always there, waiting for those who have ears to hear and eyes to see. Before we dive into Genesis, we must understand what Aleph Tav means in its native tongue. If you start with the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, you have where we get the letter A today, which is the Aleph. In ancient pictographic form, Aleph is drawn out as an ox head. This symbolizes strength, leadership, and authority. It represents the Father. Then you have the Tav. Tav was originally shaped like a cross or a mark. It symbolizes a covenant, a seal, or a sign, and it represents a future promise fulfilled in the cross of Jesus. Together, the Aleph Tav equals strength of the covenant, the divine signature of God in motion. This is not coincidence. This is God encoding the entire redemptive plan into the structure of His Word. And it begins in the very first verse of the Bible. Let's look at Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, the first mention of the Messiah himself. We read Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We all know this verse. If you look at it in Hebrew, right there you'll see the Aleph Tavs, not once but twice. You see it one time before heavens and once again before earth. Now, Hebrew scholars will often say Aleph Tav functions as a direct object pointer, a grammatical placeholder, that is. But if that were the whole story, then why is it used so selectively and so precisely, especially in prophetic narratives? Notice that the English translators, they leave it out completely. Why? Because it has no direct equivalent in English grammar. But its presence is undeniable, and if God placed it there, then it definitely demands our attention. You see the hidden Aleph Tav between Elohim and the heavens, and then you see it again before the earth. This, my friends, is a prophetic whisper. Yeshua, the Aleph and the Tav, is the agent through whom creation was made. In John chapter 1, verse 3, it confirms this. It says, "Through him all things were made, without him nothing was made that has been made." Again in Colossians 1:16 it echoes, "For by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible." The Aleph Tav in Genesis 1:1 is not silent. It's the voice of our Messiah, hidden in plain sight. We also have the Aleph Tav throughout the Torah. Over 7,000 times the Aleph Tav appears in the Old Testament. It is embedded before significant names, objects, people, and divine appointments. But today, we zero in on specific narrative where this divine marker disappears, and that disappearance speaks just as loudly as its presence. Let's go to the story of Jacob and Esau. Jacob and Esau, the Aleph Tav choice, Reading in Genesis 25:19 through 28, in the original Hebrew, both Jacob, which was Yaakov, and Esau, which is Esau, have Aleph Tavs placed in front of their names during the early stages of their lives. This shows us something very profound. Both of them were chosen. Both were covered with and by this divine signature. But when you skip ahead to Genesis 27:1, it says, "And it came to pass that when Isaac was old and his eyes were dim, so that he could not see, he called Esau his eldest son." Here Esau's name is no longer preceded by the Aleph Tav. Let that sink in. From this point forward, the Aleph Tav never again appears in front of Esau's name in the Torah, even though Esau is mentioned another 78 times. But it continues to appear before Jacob's name. This is not a scribal accident. This is spiritual discernment encoded in the scroll. Why was the divine marker removed from Esau? The answer can be found in Genesis 25, verse 34. "Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew. He ate and drank and rose and went on his way. So Esau despised his birthright." Right there in that verse is an Aleph Tav marker connected to the birthright that Esau despised. So we learn something deep. The Aleph Tav is not just a passive object marker. It's a divine signature associated with the covenantal inheritance and spiritual legacy. When Esau rejected his birthright, he also rejected the mark. The Aleph and Tav was thus then removed. But Jacob, the younger, the one who valued the blessing, he's the one that inherited not only the physical promise, but also the Aleph Tav remained upon him. Every placement of the Aleph Tav points us forward to the Messiah. When Yeshua stood before the people and said, "Before Abraham was, I am," in John 8:58, he was claiming more than divinity. He was claiming pre-existence, authority, and covenant identity. Again, in Revelations 22:13, he says, "I am the Alpha and I am the Omega." But again, that's the Greek translation. In Hebrew, he would have said, "I am the Aleph, I am the Tab." The same mysterious symbols from Genesis 1:1, the same symbols that appear before the names of covenant keepers, the same symbols that vanish when someone forsakes their inheritance. The Aleph Tav is not a theological footnote. It is the Messiah's monogram embedded into the DNA of Scripture itself. Then you have the Aleph Tav in prophecy and purpose. Think about this. When the blood was applied to the doorsteps during Passover, it created the shape of the Tav, the last letter of the alphabet. That, my friends, is the sign of the cross. When the Messiah died on the cross, he fulfilled the covenant in the shape of the Tav. He is both the beginning and the end. He is present in creation, he is revealed in redemption, and he is embodied in Genesis and fulfilled in the Gospels. The Aleph Tav reminds us that Yahweh's plan was and has always centered around the Son. So the conclusion of all this is seeing Jesus in Genesis. And what did we learn? We learned that the Aleph Tav is a prophetic symbol of the Messiah, embedded over 7,000 times in the Hebrew Scriptures. We learned that it marks divine appointments, spiritual inheritance, and messianic shadows. Its placement and absence carry spiritual weight as seen in the story of Jacob and Esau. Yeshua is the Aleph and the Tav, the beginning and the end. He is written into the first verse of the Bible, and he will reign at the final.
The presenter of this video seems to believe in a combination of Christianity and the Hebrew roots movement. The assertion, claim, or presupposition causes a person to believe that the Messiah Christ is in the Old Testament. Many say that the Christ, Messiah, is the Aleph Tav in the Old Testament Hebrew text, and somehow this mystical code of the Aleph Tav is the identifier of the Messiah. This assertive conclusion is based on the following text from the New Testament. Revelation 1 verse 8. I am the Alpha and the Omega, says Yah Almighty, who is and who was and who is to come, the all-powerful. This verse is speaking of the Most High himself and not the Messiah. The translation of the King James Bible make this verse seem as if it is speaking of the Messiah. Revelation 1 verse 8 also correlates with Isaiah 44 verse 6. Isaiah 44 verse 6 states, "This is what Yah, the King of Israel and his Redeemer, Yah of hosts, says, I am the first and I am the last, and beside me there is no mighty one." This presenter is spreading disinformation, which means intentionally spreading false information. How do we know this? In the video, he states the meaning of the Aleph Tav and its grammatical function in Hebrew. But yet, he overrides that with his assertion that some mystical code somehow states the Aleph Tav is somehow Jesus. In biblical Hebrew, the Aleph Tav is a direct object marker and can also be used as a preposition meaning beside or with. Lastly, our English Bibles translate Colossians chapter 1, verse 16 in three ways. Most people select the translation that fits their beliefs, which is exactly what the presenter did.
If you have not already done so, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure that you select the notification bell to receive continuous updates when we produce new videos.